So, as was mentioned, my name is Michelle, and it's going to come as a shock to everybody that I'm new here. If you've known me at all in the past, you may actually know me by quite a few potential last names. I have my original family name that I share with my mom and my brother, but I also have my legal last name, which is Fox, and I have my chosen family last name. And if you have known me for a recent amount of time, you may have me saved in your phone as Michelle Elements. I gave a workshop on elements a few years back, and I met an incredible group of people who introduced me to this incredible congregation. So thank you. That's why I'm here. I hope that you'll forgive my nerves. I'm working through them as I go. And I'm a person that speaks with my hands, so you may see a little bit of jittery going on as I go. Just bear with me. I'm bearing with me. The reason why I bring up the names is because it speaks to what it is that I'm going to speak to you about today. In that each of those last names that I have identifies a group that supports me and whom I support. These are people who love me and I love them. And names are one of the ways that human beings demonstrate whether or not we are part of a group or not. What I'm going to be speaking to you today is kind of going to go all over the place, so I ask that you buckle up and bear with me. But I promise that it all does have a culminating point. I swear it does. So if you've known me for any length of time, you also likely know that I have a different perspective on things, and part of that is informed by my lifestyle, my background, but also some of it is informed by my neurodivergence. And I was diagnosed quite late in my 40s, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, well, that explains so much. I've been so socially unsavvy my entire life. Well, there's the exact explanation right there, but I've come to realize, am I really that socially unsavvy? I don't think so. Let me explain a little bit about my background. I've already given you a whole bunch of TMI, so just bear with me here a little bit longer. I moved around a lot as a child, and especially during those formative years between like 4 and 7 years old, when you're forming your own identity as a unit aside from your own parents, I moved quite a bit. I was in fact in 2 different states during that time frame. I went to 4 different schools, elementary, 3 of them, 1 of them preschool. It was actually locally. And through that, I had 2 extended families. I had a family that was here in Washington. It was my mom's side of the family. And then my family that was down in California. That was my dad's side of the family. And so what all of that means is, by the time I got to about 7 years old, I'd become pretty savvy at fitting in and meeting new people, at knowing whether or not a group that I entered into was going to be the group for me. You become very aware of that at a young age, and you don't even know you're picking it up. It's a neurological thing. So, again, I told you we're going to go on a few little, road trip pivots here. So bear with me. We're going to shift gears now, so buckle up for that. But we're going to come back to little Michelle. So remember that chameleon effect, the ability to read the room and get into the group. We're going to talk a little bit about how the environment that little Michelle found herself in helped her to become who she is now socially. We're going to start, though, by talking about something called the attention economy. Some of you may have heard this. It's sort of, it's becoming a buzzword, honestly. But the attention economy is sort of a blanket statement that does a lot of heavy lifting. It talks about the way that our attention is harnessed and commodified and traded and in some cases bet on. It has become a commodity of its own. So in economics, they talk about resources that are physical resources, and then you talk about fiat resources like currency that's not based on an actual element of any kind. And then you talk about other less tangible resources, and attention is one of those. And our attention economy is thriving, and it has been for some time. And if it wasn't successful, it wouldn't have been thriving this entire time. But let's take a little bit of a trip down history lane or memory lane. It could be one of either of those for either of you. So we start with thinking about things like the stage and the podium, people speaking in plazas to groups, That's an attention economy. It started with groups and community. But then we have theater. We have records and phonographs. We have cinema, television, radio, VHS, anybody? Huh? Right?
Yeah.
Then we go on to DVDs and CDs. Now we're doing streaming on the internet. We can watch TV shows without having to wait until they come on at a specific time and day. You remember all that with cable? We have the attention economy, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, in the palm of our hands every day. And we're very accessible because we have the attention economy in our hands every day. So we have this long history of our attention being commodified throughout our society, our collective attention. And it's had many cascading effects on who we are as a people, good and bad, okay? Because the information's not always bad, right? But one of the major impacts that it's had on us is it has eroded our intuition. And that's the other pivot, so keep buckling up, all right? The attention economy has an immediate impact on our individual intuition. It distracts us away from those activities and those practices that help us to know ourselves best. So how well can you know yourself if you're super stressed? This is going to be an example straight out of my book. Super stressed about day-to-day stuff, and then you come home and you sit in front of a video game for 4 hours. Well, I'm not doing any reflection. There's no journaling. There's no meditation, no prayer, no self-knowing whatsoever. My intuition is a muscle that's sitting floppy, not being flexed whatsoever. And that's happening the world over right now. We're overwhelmed. We turn to something that's going to entertain us. It holds our attention because of the attention economy. And then we slowly stop engaging in those activities that help us to know ourselves. And that intuition is important. We've been honing that throughout human history for a reason. Just like the attention economy hasn't gone away because it's successful, our intuition exists to keep us alive. It's not even something that's fluffy, you guys. It's directly impacting our survival, okay? It allows us, as people, as individuals, to know whether or not we are within the correct community. Self-knowing allows for you to find self-placement. Everyone else that's in the community with you is also learning about themselves and their own intuition. They're opening up. And when that happens in group, the energy that's shared, I gotta tell you, it's amazing. When people are meditating together, chanting together, praying together, I'm sure most of you have felt what that's like in the room. You know what I'm talking about. So let's talk a little bit about intuition. What exactly is it? Okay, it's a huge word that's doing a lot of work, a lot like the attention economy word does. Intuition, though, if we look at the root of it throughout history, it started off as a word that had to do with theology and with knowing something that's bigger than ourselves. It's a spiritual root for that word. So what we've been doing as a species throughout history is we know ourselves deeply. We know whether or not we're capable of working with the people that are around us. And then, over and over again throughout human history, groups of people have done amazing things together. When you synergize with the people that are your people, you can get a lot of really cool stuff done. And I'm sure you all have examples of this in your own lives where you've seen people come together that have been able to achieve amazing things. That's the power that comes from knowing yourself and knowing that you're among your people. You're able to mobilize that type of great effort. And that's why that intuition exists for that moment. It's serving an evolutionary function for us as a species to continue to work together in groups to achieve amazing things. So, also, intuition helps us mirror each other. And this is an effect that we can see. We could have an entire talk on this. Maybe I will at some point. Mirror neurons in our brain allow for us to mirror other human beings. And what I suspect intuition is leaning on those, among other things, because I think that it's not something that we can quantify very easily. And we can spread our intuition and have collective intuition with each other as well. A collective knowing. Now that can be dangerous. Everyone has heard of mob mentality, but like I said, it can do wondrous things too. Right now, our attention economy, though, is robbing us of our individual intuition. And by doing so, it robs us of our collective intuition as well. Like I said, intuition does a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting. It comes from mid-15th century. I like history, so apologies if anybody falls asleep while I go down this little rabbit hole. It starts with the root in Latin for I'm going to mess this up, intuitio, which literally means looking at something or considering it. But then by the 15th century, it had been pretty swept up and it had to deal with theological ideas at that point. Insight, direct or immediate cognition, spiritual perception. And that's why today, contemporarily, we use the concept of intuition as almost like a bodily knowing to the core of who we are, the type of knowing like gravity or, if water's wet, that level of just core deep knowing. And it can also be used and kind of co-opted a little bit by the wellness space. We like to talk about intuition in very fluffy terms, but I want us to reclaim that word and recognize how real and serious it is. It's not fluffy. It keeps us alive. So all of that little word rabbit hole there. Science thinks that intuition is based partly in the way that our brains are capable of processing knowledge. And this is where I get super geeked out, super excited, because I love neuroscience, all right? That's my new little thing that I'm going on. And so our brains, I got to give you these facts because this was just amazing to me. So interregional communication between different sectors of our brains can happen between 20 and 80 milliseconds. Isn't that astounding? Our brain can talk to itself in less than a minute. What? Oh, that's bananas to me. But then reacting to external stimulation, that's 100 milliseconds. Okay, not shabby though. That's pretty quick. I mean, really. This one's really mind-blowing to me. Those were from the National Institute of Mental Health. This one's from MIT. Visual input. Okay, so we're talking about external stimuli, 100 milliseconds. Communication in between the brain, 20 to 80 milliseconds. Those are impressive. Visual input from your eyes to your brain, 13 milliseconds. How quick is that? Bananas, right? So science thinks that intuition is in part your brain being able to pick up these signals faster than you can cognitively recognize, and also our brain's superpower of pattern recognition. We can see all sorts of stuff. How many of you have looked at a wood grain door and seen faces or trees or God knows what else, Humans are great at pattern recognition. We look at clouds and we find things. That's one of the things that we are just really good at. And so science thinks that those are, play a part in intuition. And, they probably do, because a lot of times we use overarching terms like intuition to explain things that we just can't be bothered. I'm not going to go and get a neuroscience degree tomorrow, so I'm going to call it intuition because that works for what I need to communicate, a deep bodily knowing of who I am, where I belong, what's going on, okay? Ultimately, the end of all of that little rabbit hole is to say that our intuition isn't a bug. It's not a byproduct of evolutionary development. It's a feature. I can't drive it home enough. It keeps us alive. I'm going to say it until you guys are sick of it. But like all things human, we've taken this survival tool and we have dressed it in human things. Intuition is a bodily knowing, but we've dressed it into art and culture and music. You can clap your hands in time with other people in the room and your bodily knowing sinks into that rhythm. So we've introduced something that is very human, very cultural to our bodily knowing. In the same way that we make an entire culture out of culinary, out of food. Humans can make culture out of anything. So now we have a lot of baggage, for lack of a better word, attached to the idea of intuition. But we need to remember that the core root of it all is to make sure that we know who we are and where we're at and who we're around and keep us alive. It's survival. So, what does all of this have to do with anything that Michelle's talking about? Geez, that's a lot. Well, when you know who you are and you are strengthening your intuition through a lifetime of reflection, of deep knowing and practice of yourself, of asking the hard questions, of doing shadow work, if that's what you want to call it, and then you connect with other people who are also doing that same work, you have a fantastic cohesive unit, don't you? But when you have an entire economy that is fracturing and fraying that intuition, individually and collectively, you have a 4-alarm fire. You have an entire society who doesn't know who they are or where they belong. They don't know whether or not this person over here is lined up with their values or that person over there, because they don't know what their own values are. They've been distracted away from them. They've been taken away by this attention economy and off playing games like I do all the time. And so you are left with a society of people who are not capable of getting cohesive to do those large things that humans are capable of doing. What happens in that moment when you have a lack of individual identity and intuition, and a lack of cohesive intuition, is you have a society that then gravitates to those who either do or seem to have a core knowing of who they are and where they belong. And those aren't always the best people. When you have people who are lonely because they don't know themselves and they don't know who they're supposed to be with, well, they're going to go toward those lightning rod personalities that seem to know those things. And that's why everyone here, this is a 4-alarm fire. We have a society that is slowly being pulled away from itself. We have a society that's not able to know themselves individually or collectively. And as a result, they're gravitating toward whatever seems to give them the most grounding in the moment. It seems very dire, but I don't come without any kind of ideas for solutions, because that's not how I roll. So when you're dealing with this society that's been completely divorced from its intuitive birthright, how do you get that unit of people to then turn their attention back to their intuition and start flexing that muscle? What do I do as one solitary little human being to try and turn this tide around? Well, the first thing is that intuitive knowing of self. You start at the very beginning where you've got the most power, and that's your own self-empowerment. One of the ways that you can do that is to gradually pull yourself away from that attention economy. Bring your energy and your attention back to yourself. Observe yourself. How are you reacting in things? How are you handling those emotional things that really rile you up, that hurt you, or that make you feel immense joy? Get back in touch with yourself. That slow knowing is just as gratifying as a quick fix on a reel or, a clickbait article or a game. But the thing is that you get those slow dopamine connections over time. It's not instant gratification. You have to ease yourself back into it. If you've been, like me, sucked into games or whatever on your phone and you're realizing, hey, I'm starting to not know myself as well and the people around me as well, how do I reverse this? You have to gradually wean yourself off of that stuff. So start by journaling a little bit. Start by taking a walk in nature without having your phone on you. Start by having a conversation with somebody by phone or in person if you're able to. If you can text, that's great. It's convenient. That is a connection. But if you're able to talk to somebody face to face, our brains are made for that. Your intuition is going to love that. That feedback that you get from someone else is invaluable, okay? So you need to start getting to know yourself. And then you need to start recognizing whether or not you feel safe with others, because that's your intuition telling you whether or not your group is your tribe. And now we're going to come back to little Michelle. Little Michelle that moved a million times. Little Michelle that had to be this person for this extended family and this person for that extended family, who had to be able to read the room quickly and decide how she was going to fit in. That little person is starting to know herself again. And by doing so, I've learned this key, that I'm a peer learner. I'm learning everything just like everyone else is. And this is one of the things that I've learned, and I'm going to share it with you. Get to know yourself right now. Come back into yourself. Pull your attention back. Flex your intuition. Feel where you need to be, because that's why I'm here right now. I came to this church by invitation. I came to see somebody speak. And then I kept coming. And every time that I entered the room, I haven't even gotten into this because I'm not going to do TMI on you guys right now, but churches have a lot of heaviness for me, specifically the buildings. And so I had to really pump myself up the first few times I got here. I'm sure you guys have seen the hasty exits that I made a couple of times because I had to ease back into it. But you know what? Once I started flexing my intuition and I started reading the room, I knew this is where I needed to be. And that's why I decided I wanted to speak for you guys today. I wanted to let you know how it is that I found myself here. And by doing so, I want to invite all of you to flex your intuition, to get to know yourself very well. If you already know yourself very well, that's fantastic. Flex it more. Beef up those gains. Do it. Because that intuition is going to help you know whether or not you're among the right people. And having that synergy with the right people, well, I mean, you can build pyramids. You can build the Eiffel Tower. You can build the Hoover Dam. I'm sure there are other things that are much more impressive that I can't think of right now. But you get the idea, right? This is our birthright as human beings. We are social creatures. That's how we survive. And if we can know ourselves and know our people, we can do powerful things. And we can be the powerful, knowing personalities that people turn to when they feel lonely and lost, when they don't know where they're supposed to be. And that's what I have for you today.